sermon, Joseph 4. The real reason that I'm doing that is because she puts these things all online, they're all there, and if I'm running a series like this, it's going to be a whole lot easier if you start at the beginning. Levon had me come over, Dale, and go through the book rack the other day because Robert Whitlow has got some big series, and she's got the book that starts with number 2. And she said, go over there and you find Deep Water by Robert Whitlow, because that's book 1. It's just better if you can start at the beginning. So Joseph 1, Joseph 2, but have you ever read one of those books? Have you ever read? I haven't ever read one of those books. Have you ever read one of those books that you get about partway through it and they give you an option? You can go to page 32 and proceed to read, or you can start again at page 50 because it's got about 3 different novels in one. And you can pick your own novel, and you can read. If you've ever done that, that's kind of what this morning's Joseph 4 is. There are assorted titles that you could choose for Joseph 4. You could settle on, It Isn't Fair. It isn't fair. Or you could choose, It's All About Attitude. It's all about attitude. Or you can stay with Joseph 4. You can take your choice. Any one of them will work. Joseph is the 11th son of Jacob. He has 10 half-brothers who hate him because he is the favored son of his father, Jacob. So at 17 years old, the 10 half-brothers sold him into slavery. He was taken by a caravan of Midianites into the land of Egypt, and there he became slave to the captain of the guard of the Pharaoh of Egypt. He did well at his job. He was promoted and given great respect and authority. And then the captain of the guard's wife accused him of rape. He is thrown into the dungeon. He's thrown into jail. I got a letter from an inmate not too long ago. The showers in Rollins are cold. And he says, I believe they are violating my human rights. I wonder if Joseph had that kind of a... Imagine, if you will, what kind of a dungeon the Pharaoh provided for inmates of that day. Huh? I don't think you worried about whether the shower was hot or cold. I guarantee you it was a miserable situation. Okay? It was a miserable situation. But in jail, he gained trust and respectability and responsibility. I tell you what, when I go to Basin, the guys that get promoted to trustee really love it. If you're a trustee, you don't just have to sit in that cell and look at the walls or watch the tube. You can actually go do something, and you can be involved in something that makes the time go faster. They really like that. When I was graduating from high school, there was a kid that was 3 or 4 years ahead of me by the name of Roger Glenn. And Roger Glenn was a smoozer. Now, I don't know how you spell smoozer. I don't know how you define smoozer. But I know what a smoozer is when I see one. He was a smoozer in school, and then he entered real estate where smoozing really worked. He eventually got caught smoozing, and they put him in jail. But they only put him in jail for long enough that he would stay at the county level for the full term. But being a smoozer, he soon became a trustee. And as a trustee smoozer, he went to the record book and changed his release date. So Roger got released in very short time, all of which would have been good if he'd have left Michigan and gone to Florida. But all of a sudden, the people who worked hard to get him put in jail realized he's only been in jail 2.5 months out of a year, and he's already back selling real estate. That time, smoozing didn't work. He didn't get to be trustee again. They put him in and they just left him locked up. They might have given an extended time, I would imagine, for that. But just being a trustee doesn't mean much. Joseph proved loyal and valuable when he could have taken advantage of the system. Joseph chose instead to honor God and give his best. To give his best. We're in a world where a lot of people reserve their best. Now, if you hire me, that'd be a mistake to start with, but if you did, if you hired me to work for you, I will give you my best, whether you pay me $1 an hour or $30 an hour. I don't care how much you pay. You will get my best, which may not be much, but you will get my best. I have worked with guys who say, well, he's only paying me a low rate, so he's only getting half my energy, because I'm worth twice what he's paying me. I learned work ethic from a millionaire when I was a teenager. The millionaire owned a big property that he had divided and subdivided, and I had bought a lot from him on a lake in northern Michigan. His name was Norm Smith. He was the owner of this thing. He was a valuable man. And one day I saw him putting shingles on the roof of the cabin next to mine. I was interested. I had built a cabin. I was still 17 or 18, but I had bought a lot, and I built a cabin in northern Michigan. And so I went over and I said, Mr. Norm, why on earth are you up there working on somebody's roof, putting shingles on somebody's roof? He says, because I work. I said, what? He said, I work. He said, if there's $15 an hour work, I take $15 an hour work. If there's only $10 an hour work, I take $10 an hour work. This is only $4 an hour work, but I work. And it's the only work that's available right now, so I'm working for $4 an hour. Well, I wrote that down in my incredible memory. And I've never forgotten it. There are those guys who just don't do that. You know, well, I'm worth more than that. I'll sit at home. Well, Norm worked. Joseph worked. Joseph worked. He was in prison. He was unjustly in prison. There was no reason for him to be there. He could have been totally bitter. But he chose instead to be in there and to work. And to work in such a fashion that he received promotion. You say, well, if God's blessing him, and we know that he did, Joseph's good to go and he's okay. He knows God's blessing him. I cautioned you a week ago not to underestimate Satan. You know that Satan was there, pestering him, telling him, why are you wasting your time? Satan has always been the accuser of the brethren. He has always been there to accuse you of being worthless, accuse you of wasting your time, accusing you of not being able to make a difference. You can't make it. You're going to rot away in here. You're never going to get out of here. Joseph, give it up. Give it up, Joseph. You know Satan was bothering him, threatening him with all kinds of things. Fortunately, after a period of time, and we don't know what period of time, but after a period of time, the Pharaoh runs into difficulty with two of his servants, his cupbearer. The cupbearer is the guy who tastes all of the food ahead of the king to see if it's poisonous. Now, they must have used very quick-acting poison in that time, because I've seen people eat food that didn't make them sick for some time. But that's who the cupbearer was. He was to taste all the food, maybe not just because it was poisonous, but hey, Pharaoh, you got a new cook, I would not recommend it. That wasn't good for the cook. The cupbearer was a very important person. But for some reason, he falls into disfavor with the Pharaoh. He's thrown into jail. Likewise, so is the baker. The chief baker is thrown into jail. And they're in there with Joseph. Well, all is well until both the baker and the cupbearer have dreams. Genesis chapter 40. Genesis chapter 40. They both have dreams. And they're in the jail as Joseph comes by. He says, I can see you are very downcast. You are very downtrodden. Why are you so downtrodden? And they said, we've had dreams. They torment us because we do not know what they mean. Now, we tend to underestimate the value of God-given dreams. Our culture tends to dismiss dreams as having any potential prophetic value. You go to a Muslim culture, if you've read about Muslims being one to the Lord, you know that in that culture, God uses dreams. And some of the great Muslim Christians of today, people that have left the Muslim faith to become Christians, have done so because of very significant dreams. And in reading one or two of those books, I have read their dreams. And God uses dreams. And Joseph here says to the guys, well, I'll read it. Verse 8. Genesis 40, verse 8. He says, how come you're downcast? And they reply, we both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean. Joseph responds with, interpreting dreams is God's business. Joseph replied, go ahead and tell me your dreams. Now, when he said that, he must have been of the opinion that God would give him. He's had time to think about the dreams he had. He's never had an understanding of those dreams, but he believes that dreams are God's business. And he says, tell me your dream. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. In my dream, he said, I saw a grapevine in front of me. The vine had 3 branches that began to bud and blossom, and soon it produced clusters of ripe grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's wine cup in my hand, so I took a cluster of grapes and squeezed the juice into the cup. Then I placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. This is what the dream means, Joseph said. The 3 branches represent 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position as chief cupbearer. How wonderful. And please, remember me and do me a favor when things go well with you. Mention me to Pharaoh so that he might let me out of this place where I was kidnapped from my homeland, the land of the Hebrews, and now I am here in prison, but I can do nothing about it. Now the chief baker goes on to give his dream, and Joseph, in total honesty, says, sorry to tell you this, but your dream is not so pleasant. In 3 days, the Pharaoh's going to kill you. Well, it happened just exactly as Joseph had predicted. It happened just that way. And the cupbearer gets to return. The cupbearer gets to return to the Pharaoh. And imagine the joy in Joseph's heart when he says, finally, light in the tunnel. I finally got the ear of the Pharaoh. I mean, the chief cupbearer knows that I virtually unraveled the mystery of his life. Surely he's going to go and he's going to say, Pharaoh, you can't believe this. But I actually knew before you did it what you were going to do. I was actually told by a guy in the prison what was going to happen. So Joseph is down there standing there waiting to hear the clang of the door open. And he hears nothing. He hears nothing. He hears nothing. Nothing happens. It's Pharaoh's birthday when the cupbearer is restored. Verse 22 says the chief baker is killed. And verse 23 says Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. Never giving him another thought. And can't you somehow hear Joseph crying out, God! God, it isn't fair! It isn't fair! Now, every elementary school kid sooner or later comes home and says, Dad, it ain't fair! And every time that happens, you gently get a hold of your son's shoulders and rub the back of his little head and you tell him, son, you need to learn life isn't fair. But believe me, the second it happens to you at the workplace, yeah, you need more than a rub on the head. This ain't fair! Where's my union representative? This ain't fair. We're going to deal with this. This ain't fair. We don't get over it ain't fair in the 6th grade. We never get over it ain't fair. We don't get over it isn't fair. We want fairness. And if we don't see fairness, we tend to get very upset about it. This isn't fair. It just isn't fair. But, nonetheless, we need to recognize that the world is not fair. God gave Adam and Eve a perfect world. And Satan destroyed it. And Satan's goal is your destruction. Your suicide is his ultimate goal. The end of your influence. The end of anything you can impact upon anybody else. Satan's goal is your total destruction. I went to Alaska with Dr. Orban from the Powell Emergency Department. He rode up with me one time. We were taking up a load of cattle with my brother. So we talked for a lot of hours. And I love Dr. Orban. We had a great conversation. So in one of our conversations, I said, you know, Dr. Orban, he says, I've never quite understood doctors saying, how heavy is your pain on a scale of 1 to 10? How can that really tell you anything? Well, he says, it doesn't tell you much, it just tells them that you're asking questions. He says, I can tell you it is really fruitless to ask a kid what their pain level is on a level of 1 to 10, because they've never had any pain. To a kid, every pain's a 10. They're all 10s. The truth of it is, my 10 is nothing compared compared to a man that's being tortured by somebody who's trying to torture him to bring out information. The pain they can induce is so huge that my 10 dwarfs in its presence. A lot of people have endured enormous pain, real pain. But there are emotional pains that can make physical pains dwarf. Because the emotional pain can go on your whole life. My brother sold me into slavery. How many kids have grown up so downtrodden, so abused in any way you want to describe that the pain impacts them forever. They're impacted forever. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. No, I know it wasn't fair, but it's still a reality. And they have grown up with it. And they have been subjected to enormous pain. So much so that it may hamper their ability themselves to parent because of the way they were parented. And that hurt, that pain is so great. You know, there's value in old sayings. Here's a valuable old saying. A stitch in time saves 9. You know what that means, Bryce? You don't have a clue! You ignorant little... You don't have... A stitch in time saves 9. Grandma used to tell me that all the time. You don't know what that means. That means when I tear this one button off your shirt, if you will quickly fix it, it will save more damage from occurring. In other words, a guy the other day, this is true, a guy the other day heard a tick in his engine. And he said to himself, I better put a quart of oil in this tomorrow. About an hour later, the engine blew up. Do you see how a stitch in time would have saved 9? If he'd have put a quart in for $4, he wouldn't be trying to buy an engine for less than $3,000 now. Yeah, that's right. A stitch in time saying, that's a good saying. You know, there are some other sayings that aren't worth the paper they're written on. I've never figured this one out, Mary. Yeah, I've never figured this out. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Tell that to Brett Kavanaugh. Huh? I never have figured out how that was supposed to make sense. In today's world, political assassination through defamation of character is the way we operate. We literally destroy somebody through false accusation. False accusation literally destroys them. That's where Joseph's at. False accusation. He's guilty of nothing. But to the world around him, he's guilty. He's guilty. He's a bum. You all remember when DNA first became a method of documentation, documenting the truth. Jail cells were opened all across America. Death row gave up inmates who had been sitting on death row because a jury had convicted them. They were guilty. And DNA says, you got the wrong guy. Huh? Wow. Wow. Life isn't fair. It isn't fair. It just isn't fair. Cynthia is going to come. I was about halfway through making this sermon and I thought, wow, this is the perfect song for this sermon. Cynthia, go. Hey, she's even going to come to Clark. Bless her heart. We'll see. Oh, she's coming to Clark.
We pray for healing, for prosperity. We pray for your mighty hand to ease our suffering. And all the while, you hear each spoken need. Yet love us way too much to give us lesser things. 'Cause what if your blessings come through raindrops? What if your healing comes through tears? And what if 1,000 sleepless nights are what it takes to know you're here? And what if trials of this life are your mercies in disguise? We pray for wisdom, your voice to hear. We cry in anger when we cannot feel you near. We doubt your goodness, we doubt your love, as if every promise from your word is not enough. And all the while, you hear each desperate plea, and long that we have faith to believe. 'Cause what if your blessings come through raindrops? What if your healing comes through tears? And what if 1,000 sleepless nights are what it takes to know you're here? And what if trials of this life are your mercies in disguise? When friends betray us, when darkness seems to win, we know pain reminds this heart that this is not our home. It's not our home. What if your blessings come through raindrops? What if your healing comes through tears? And what if 1,000 sleepless nights are what it takes to know you're here? What if my greatest disappointments or the aching of this life is a revealing of a greater thirst this world can't satisfy? And what if trials of this life, the rain, the storms, the hardest nights, are your mercies in disguise?
Amen. Amen. She's coming to the car. Yeah. I'll read this paragraph. A young woman sang a solo in front of a large audience. Her vocal technique was splendid, her intonation excellent, her range significant. Coincidentally, the man who had written the piece of music which she was singing was sitting in the audience. When the young woman finished, the person sitting next to the composer leaned over and said, "Well, what do you think of her?" Softly, the composer responded, "She will be really great when something happens to break her heart." She will be really great when something happens to break her heart. A.W. Tozer, the great theologian of the 1960s said, "It is doubtful whether God can really bless a man greatly until he has been hurt deeply." You know? Ooh, you mean there's value in that? God has unleashed greatness through pain. I mean, the bottom line is, you get to choose whether to be a victim or a survivor. You get to choose whether to be a victim or a survivor. You can let this pain destroy you, cripple you from being able to do anything, or you can build greatness upon it. You can take it, grab a hold of it. The cupbearer. I'm thankful for two verses in this little story. One is in verse 37, verse 2, that tells us he was 17 years old when this started. The next one I'm glad God included is chapter 41, verse 46. It says, "And Joseph was 30 years old when the Pharaoh called him to serve him." So there are 13 years of this pain that he endures. We're told that it was 2 full years before the cupbearer suddenly remembered, the Pharaoh's had a dream he can't explain. Oh my goodness. And he runs to the Pharaoh. All right, we're told that. Was Joseph aware of that the night before it happened? No. 2 full years could have been 20 as far as Joseph was concerned. I'm going to sit here and rot. And supposing the night before the cupbearer remembers, the night before Joseph has had, "God, I am so sick of this, I'm going to curse you and die." Joseph just stays faithful. It's all about attitude. Charles Edison wrote a book about his dad, Thomas Edison. Who's Bryce? Who's Thomas Edison? Come on, quick. Who's Thomas Edison? President. Yeah, okay. Right. I don't think that's right. You can't remember. Electricity. Oh, it's Sunday. It's Sunday. You don't remember on Sunday. It's too early. Okay. The truth of it is they quit teaching some things that used to be mandatory. Yeah. Now they're teaching cell phone mechanism. Okay. All right. We would be sitting in the dark if it wasn't for Edison. He developed the light bulb. Okay? And Thomas Edison, I know all about him because he lived in Port Huron, Michigan, and I was 20 miles from him. So we had to learn when his birthday was, when he had his tonsils out, and everything else. We had to learn it all. But Edison made 1,000 light bulbs that didn't work. And somebody says, "Doesn't your failure overwhelm you?" And he said, No. I have cataloged 1,000 ways that I know won't work. I'm getting closer to the answer. So his son wrote a book about him called The Electric Edison. And in the book is this brief little incident. One December evening, the cry of fire echoed throughout the plant. Spontaneous combustion had broken out in the film room. Within moments, all of the packing compounds, celluloid for records, film, and other flammable goods were gone up with a whoosh. When I couldn't find Father, I became concerned. Was he safe? With all of his assets going up in smoke, would his spirit be broken? He was 67, no age at which to begin anew. Then I saw him in the plant yard, running toward me. "Where's Mom?" he shouted. "Go get her. Tell her to get her friends. She'll never see another fire like this in her life." At 5:30 in the morning, when the fire was barely under control, he called his employees together and announced, were rebuilding. One man was told to lease all the machine shops in the area. Another was to obtain a wrecking crane from the Erie Railroad Company. Then, almost as an afterthought, he said, "Oh, by the way, anybody know where we can get some money?" Later on, he explained, "You can always make capital out of a disaster. We've just cleared out a bunch of old rubbish. We'll build bigger and better on these ruins." And with that, he rolled up his coat for a pillow, curled up on the table, and immediately fell asleep. Thomas says, it's all about attitude. Stand with me. It's all about attitude. It's all about attitude. It's all about attitude. So, next week I'll quiz somebody else, Bryce. Thank you for being such a good sport. I'll see who I can pick on in Clark. Father, thank you for the story of Joseph. Because we all know pain. We all know different levels of pain. We all know what it's like to be the innocent victim of inflicted pain. And each to a different degree. We've all been able to scream out, "God, it isn't fair." But Father, we pray that we would have the attitude of Joseph, the attitude of Edison. We can build on this disaster. God is still with us. He will take us through it. We will yet see God blossom in our lives and turn this into something worthwhile. So, Father, help us to trust you as Joseph did. Thank you for Joseph. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. God bless you. Amen.